Hello everybody and welcome back to my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 20 on the Sacae side. We are getting really close to the end of Sacae, which means we just have a couple more bullshit chapters left. There's actually only 2 chapters left, this one and the Gaiden chapter. These are definitely 2 of the most frustrating chapters, I would say, in the entire game. This chapter, if you can handle the first, let's say 5 or so turns, because there's, bolting and ballistas and status stabs, you're pretty set. There really isn't a lot to do outside of, well, dealing with all of that, which is a lot. But if you can work past it, this chapter is not so bad. Now, you do have to complete this chapter in 25 turns if you want to get the Gaiden chapter. So definitely be mindful of that. But again, the first 5 or so turns are pretty complicated, but after that, it's a pretty straight shot to the boss. So I wouldn't worry too much, and playing this slow is definitely a good strategy. So this is a Fog of War chapter, which is the reason that I have a map up here for us. We're going to be looking at this. So what's going on here? As you can see, you are in a very confined space, and there are a lot of units that aren't exactly reachable. And these units do, in fact, have generally either status stabs or bolting. So the 2 sages in the middle, you can see in that little middle room, both have bolting, and this is like 30 to 35, I think it's something like 34 power bolting. So these are really, really strong. You can't let both of these range Roy. This is where having some kind of plan, whether it be you getting warp earlier. I know I said I usually don't get warp, but warp could be kind of helpful. You could potentially range them with longbows. Bolting of your own can be extremely useful. We are going to be getting Niime, who has Eclipse. Eclipse sucks. We've talked about that, but can also use status stabs really effectively. So a decent strategy can be to potentially sleep one of them, and that can, if your Roy has enough health, can allow your Roy to kind of sneak through the other one. You can absolutely complete this chapter by just using 2 sleeps and getting 10 turns of sleep out of one of the bolting sages. That's a pretty good strategy. But yeah, having a strategy and a plan to deal with or neutralize one of the 2 sages in the middle is really, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Also being really careful with thieves. If you decide to bring a thief to this chapter, which is not a bad strategy, making sure that a stall can survive one of the bolting hits, something along those lines, really, really useful. Obviously, again, really frustrating because it's a Fog of War chapter, so you're not going to be able to see what kind of power these sages have. Again, we can look when we actually see it on the chapter. I believe it's something like 34 magic, or sorry, 34 attack. So keeping that in mind is really important. Other than that, we have a couple sages up there near the boss, and a sage on the left and a sage on the right. I believe there's Berserk, Sleep, and Silence with all of these. So again, Restore, extremely useful. You don't necessarily have to be able to deal with these units, but having multiple Restore users is extremely important. Obviously, as I said, we're going to be getting Niime. We'll talk about her when the chapter starts, but she's awesome. She has pretty good resistance, so it's fairly hard for the sages to actually Berserk or silence her. And she can use all the restores or status stabs you want. So she's absolutely awesome. We're going to be utilizing her, but having other restore users, really, really important. There's also ballistas on the side, as you can see. These ballistas aren't too bad. Again, you do need to be cognizant of them, but they're certainly not as scary as the bolting sages in the middle. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. And again, they only range once you sort of progress through the chapter. So once we get through those first handful of turns and you've either baited out the bolting or dealt with them, and then you have to deal with the ballistas, and it's not as complicated. As far as the enemies are concerned, as I said, there's not a ton. You can either go to the right and go through the doors. You can even potentially get a couple of chests on your way out. You can potentially get them all if you want. Again, you do have to be careful with a stall or whatever thief you're using. Because as much as those ballistas aren't super scary, they can still kill, especially weaker units. Or you can go to the left. In the chest, there is a Blue Gem, Axe Reaver, Guiding Ring, Nosferatu, Sleep, and Draco Shield. You can also steal some stuff, but that really involves warping, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. The Draco Shield and Nosferatu are both really useful. Sleep is also really useful. If you need a Guiding Ring at this stage, you can get one here, although you probably won't, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But Nosferatu for Niime is awesome. Sleep for Niime is awesome, and then Draco Shield is just a useful thing. Kath also appears in this chapter. I believe this is the second to last opportunity for Kath. I would be surprised if you haven't recruited Kath at this point. I've never seen Kath appear on this chapter. She is going to appear on the Zephiel chapter, which is a few chapters down the road. So you do still have an opportunity for her. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. The boss himself is a general who is fairly bulky, but really easy to double. Really easy to kill if you have a decent Armor Slayer user, or especially if you have decent mages and sages, which you probably will at this point. Even Niime can do some pretty good work. So again, the biggest thing is deal with at least one of the two bolting guys in the middle, or just be aware that they're there and have units that can take both boltings. And make sure you have restores. Those are the most important things about this chapter, and it won't be too frustrating. Okay, so really quick before we start, I just want to go over my preps. You don't have to bring anyone specific. We are going to be getting two really awesome new characters. One is a druid, and one is a nomad trooper. So if you want to bring some items for them, you can. Actually, I didn't think about this, but a pretty good strategy is to bring potentially like an extra resource staff, sleep again. Niime is really good with berserk as well. You can just give her a bunch of stuff. Make sure you have multiple restore users. Obviously, as I said, we're going to be getting Niime, but I have Saul and Cecilia doing this job, so not terrible. A stall as well. If you gave him a guiding ring, he could probably take like a bolting. If you didn't, he can't, so be really careful with him. Also, there's pretty much no way, unless you really put a lot into Roy, that he'll be able to take both boltings. Even mine with 58 HP. So just be aware of that. You can also map out the sages pretty easily. Again, they start here and here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. So around here, probably like here and here is where the boltings can get to. So just be aware of that. But yeah, mostly just bring your strongest units. Again, having a thief is really useful. Just be really careful with him. And I think we're good to go here. So, alright, so first new character is Niime. I've been talking about her quite a bit, and she is absolutely awesome. So you can see by her stats, she's pretty darn strong. Extremely frail. She's an old woman, so it makes a lot of sense. Only 5 defense and 25 HP. But her offensive stats are quite good. Her constitution isn't very good, but dark magic doesn't weigh like too much in this game. And her speed's okay, but mostly it's her magic and her resistance that we're really looking for. She also has A and A in dark magic and stabs, which is really nice. She's a really good apocalypse user in the end game, which is the S rank dark magic. And she's, again, really good at using status stabs. The 21 magic is going to mean that even the more tanky magic users, she'll still have pretty good hit on, especially in comparison to like my 10 magic Saul or my 12 magic Cecilia. So Niime is absolutely awesome. You can do some stuff with her. You could have saved some robes and potentially given them to her. If you give her enough HP, she can Nosferatu stall on certain chapters pretty easily. Yeah, you can do all sorts of different things with her. She's absolutely awesome. Highly recommend using her quite a bit going forward. Alright, so a few things I want to go over. Number one is that, I didn't mention this, but I think Barrier is also quite useful here. Setting Melody out the way that I did is fairly safe because Melody's Melody, but a Barrier Staff could have made it a little bit safer. I also want to mention that even though I said 34 attack, this guy actually has 37 attack, so just be aware. I'm not sure if it can range or if it's just a little bit higher than I thought, but yeah, pretty darn strong there. Also, Niime, despite having quite good resistance, is actually pretty commonly the target of status stabs because she is recruited on the chapter. She's technically the bottom of your deployment order, and we talked about deployment order a bunch earlier, that enemies with status stabs will prioritize low deployment order units, which is really good because Niime's resistance isn't amazing, but it's not terrible. You can also potentially barrier her if you want, and really make it so people can't use status stabs on her. So that can be extremely useful. I'm going to kill this guy with Lou really quick. And then we're going to look at some sleep options with the Sage out there. I also just realized that I am cutting off the bottom of this, which is not great. Sorry about that. I hope that wasn't too annoying. Let me adjust this a little bit. Alright, that looks okay. Hopefully that's alright. So yeah, so let's see what Niime can do. First, it would probably help if I gave her the status tab. So we'll just have Gonzalez do this. He doesn't die to a crit, so whatever. Good enough. But I just want to show off how effective she can be with status staffs. And as I said, there is a bunch of status staff enemies on the chapter, but the Berserker, or the Berserk guy targeted Niime. Probably just need Flux for this. So that was really nice. Yeah, so we have 77 hit, which is not bad. And I think I am going to go for this. Again, it just makes it much safer. I don't really have great sleep strats throughout the game, the end game. If you have some other sleep strat you want to use, obviously you may want to save your sleeps. But again, we can potentially get new sleeps on this chapter, so using it here is not a bad idea. Okay, so this guy has 33 attack, so this can definitely range quite a bit. This guy is quite a bit weaker. We could even potentially dance for Niime and do it again, which I don't hate, but 33, I believe, means that basically everybody can survive outside of a stall, which is not the end of the world. Again, there is a turn limit here, but it's not like that short. It's 25 turns, so you don't have to do this in too much of a hurry. Oh, one more thing I want to mention really quick is that bolting in this game only weighs 10. I believe it weighs 20 in some of the other games, but 10 isn't that much, which means this guy, for example, only gets weighed down by 3, which means he does still have 10 speed. This doesn't really matter. Like, Roy will basically never get doubled by this stuff, and none of my units will, but if you have, like, a really slow unit, like, I'm not sure what Douglas's base speed is, but just be a little bit careful with this stuff, especially the slightly faster units. Like, for example, this guy's 11 speed. That can be a bit bad. Obviously, doubling can be a pain. Fa can also be amazing here. Fa's always amazing in Siege Tomes. I did mention Fa in the preps, but she can be really useful here as well. Okay, so we just got a new character, and that is Diane. He appears on, what is this, turn 2 or turn 3, and you can recruit him, I believe, with Roy or either of the nomads, so Shin or Su. Diane is a pretty sweet unit, as you can see. We mentioned on the Ilya side that Juno, who's sort of the comparative unit, I guess you could say, to Diane, is pretty crappy. But Diane's pretty awesome. 20 speed means he's gonna double pretty consistently on anything that's not like a hero or a swordmaster. His other sets are also pretty solid. 43 HP is not bad. His weapon ranks, at least in bows, is also not bad. Diane is really, really good because he can fight nomads, and nomad troopers pretty useful, or pretty good. But on chapter 21, which is basically all wyverns, just having access to another bow user who has decent strength and can double consistently is so nice. So Diane is a really nice unit. You certainly don't have to use him. He doesn't quite have the utility of Niime, but bows are really nice, and they're going to be really nice in a couple of chapters. So I would highly recommend at least keeping him in mind when you deploy units. Alright, really quick, I just wanted to correct one thing that I said in the opening. I could have sworn there were more status stabs in this chapter, but this guy does have Berserk, he just used his last one. Also, when Diane comes, he becomes the lowest deployment slot unit in your army, so he'll get targeted, which is fine. You'll just have to probably use one restore use on him. There is not sleep and silence on this chapter. For some reason, I thought that like this guy had sleep or silence, and then this guy had the other one, but no, there's just Berserk as far as status stabs go, so you don't have to worry too much about status stabs here. But yeah, I just want to mention that with Diane, and that I was a bit wrong about the status stabs. In the opening, there is a bit less. So yeah, my strategy here is basically just to let this guy keep bolting. I'll probably just put this guy back to sleep once it gets up, and then I'll have a stall start opening these doors, and we can just kind of bum rush the boss. It may take 2 more sleeps. We will see. But I just want to mention here as well that the way that I'm handling this chapter is not the best in the world. I did my preps kind of fast. Bringing either door keys so that a stall doesn't have to move up, or bringing barriers so that a stall can actually take a bolting are definitely better ways to handle this chapter. Again, you have 25 turns, so taking a couple of extra turns here is really not going to be the end of the world at the end of the day. But if you want to handle this a little bit smoother, I would highly recommend either bringing door keys on somebody else, or just either using a robot in a stall or bringing barrier for him. Those are much better strategies than what I'm doing. You can also potentially pick him up and then drop him, lull him to open a door, and then pick him up again, rinse and repeat that, which is also a strategy, although most of this is just fairly convoluted, again, because I didn't bring barrier or anything.